Jordan Miles had always believed in the power of perseverance. As a young black man from a modest neighborhood, he had worked tirelessly to build something of his own, from selling handcrafted bracelets at flea markets to eventually launching a luxury jewelry brand that now had stores in multiple cities. His journey was anything but easy, but he never let the odds define him. He had become a self-made millionaire and the proud CEO of Miles & Company, a brand known for its timeless pieces and impeccable customer service. One crisp Saturday afternoon, Jordan decided to pay a surprise visit to one of his recently renovated stores, located in a high-end shopping district. He chose to go without his usual entourage or tailored suit. Dressed in jeans, a plain t-shirt, and sneakers, he wanted to see how customers were truly treated without the influence of his title. His baseball cap was pulled low, and a light hoodie covered most of his face. To any outsider, he looked like just another customer browsing the shops. As he entered the store, the atmosphere changed out, not in the way he had hoped. The sleek interior gleamed with glass cases, each one displaying diamond rings, gold chains, and luxury timepieces. A gentle melody played in the background, and the lighting was soft but elegant. Despite the inviting design, Jordan couldn't help but feel the chill of indifference. Two sales associates stood behind the main counter, chatting quietly and occasionally glancing at him. Jordan offered a polite smile and walked toward a display showcasing engagement rings. He paused in front of the case, admiring a platinum ring with a brilliant cut diamond. Still no one approached him. Minutes passed. He finally looked up and made eye contact with one of the employees, a young woman with perfectly styled hair and a stiff expression. She raised her eyebrows slightly, almost as if surprised he was still standing there. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone flat and forced. "Yes," Jordan replied calmly. "I'm interested in a few of these rings. Could I take a closer look at this one here?" The woman glanced at the item he pointed to, then back at him, clearly unimpressed. "That ring starts at $25,000, she said, emphasizing the price. "Are you sure that's what you're looking for?" Jordan nodded, choosing not to react. "Yes, I'd like to see it, please." Instead of assisting him, she turned toward her co-worker and muttered something under her breath. They both chuckled quietly. The other employee, a man with a stiff collar and a smug smirk, stepped forward. "We actually have some more affordable options on the other side of the store," he offered, gesturing toward a distant section. "You might find something more suitable over there." Jordan's expression remained neutral, but inside, he felt the sting of their assumptions. It wasn't the first time he had been judged by the color of his skin or the clothes he wore, but it never got easier. Still, he kept his composure. He had learned long ago that dignity often speaks louder than anger. He walked toward the other section they pointed out, playing along for the moment. On his way, he passed another couple who had just entered the store, dressed in designer outfits, laughing as they walked in. Within seconds, both associates lit up, greeting them warmly, offering champagne, and presenting trays of high-end watches for them to try on. Jordan stood in silence, watching the stark contrast. He could have said something then, could have revealed who he was, but he didn't. Not yet. He wanted to see just how far they'd take their bias. Because this visit wasn't just about catching poor service, it was about exposing the quiet discrimination that still ran beneath polished counters and friendly smiles. And from what he had seen so far, the store had failed its first test. As he stood by himself in the corner of his own store, he made a mental note. Things were about to change. Jordan continued browsing the cases quietly, his presence still largely ignored by the staff. Though the store was nearly empty, no one offered to assist him any further. The woman who had earlier dismissed him walked back to the counter and resumed chatting with her colleague. occasionally glancing his way with thinly veiled irritation. Their conversation grew louder, and Jordan couldn't help but catch snippets of what they were saying. "Seriously, who comes in here dressed like that?" the man muttered, his voice just low enough to pretend it was private, but loud enough to be heard. "Probably just wasting time," the woman replied with a smirk. "He looked like he wandered in by mistake." They both laughed, and Jordan felt their amusement hit him like a slap. His calm demeanor remained intact, but inside, a storm brewed. This was more than just poor customer service. It was blatant disrespect, born out of ignorance and prejudice. He had built this store. Every piece of its design, layout, and inventory reflected his vision. Yet here he was, treated like a nuisance in the very space that bore his name. He approached the main counter again, hoping for at least a basic level of professionalism. "Excuse me, I'm still interested in seeing that ring," he said, pointing once more to the same diamond engagement ring. The female associate looked him up and down. "Sir, I already told you the price. We have other items if you're just looking," she said dismissively. Jordan kept his voice even. "I'd like to see that one specifically." With a roll of her eyes, she leaned slightly closer, lowering her voice. "Look, we reserve handling our most expensive items for serious customers only. We've had incidents before." Jordan blinked. "Incidents?" She didn't elaborate. Instead, she turned away completely, tapping her nails against the counter as if to signal the conversation was over. Just as he was about to respond, the door chimed. A woman in her late 40s walked in, well-dressed but not flashy. Her eyes scanned the store quickly and landed on Jordan. A smile lit up her face, and she walked straight over. "Mr. Miles," she said, surprised and delighted. "Oh my goodness, it's really you. I haven't seen you here in person before." Jordan smiled warmly. "Good to see you, Teresa. It's been a while." Teresa had been a loyal customer of Miles and Company for years. She had even attended one of the brand's launch events. She turned toward the staff, clearly expecting them to recognize who they had been mistreating. "Do you two even realize who this is?" she asked, her tone sharp now. "This is Jordan Miles, the founder and CEO of this entire brand." For a second, the room went still, but then the male associate chuckled awkwardly. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I think you might be mistaken. Our CEO wouldn't walk around looking like—" He paused, gesturing vaguely toward Jordan. Teresa's jaw dropped. "Are you serious? Do you hear yourselves? You're refusing service to the man who signs your paychecks." Even then, the staff hesitated, unsure whether to believe her or not. The female employee shrugged. "Well, he didn't introduce himself. How were we supposed to know?" "You didn't need to know," Teresa snapped. "You just needed to do your job, and you failed spectacularly." Jordan gave Teresa a grateful nod. "Thanks, but it's okay. I wanted to see how things were running when no one was watching. Now I have a very clear picture." He turned to face the employees directly, his expression unreadable. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't curse or threaten, but the weight in his words was unmistakable. "Service isn't reserved for people who look like they belong. It should be for everyone who walks through those doors. If that's not what you believe, then you don't belong here." With that, he pulled out his phone and quietly began typing. The two employees stood frozen, realizing far too late that the man they had mocked, judged, and ignored was their boss, the very person they were supposed to represent. Jordan stood silently in the center of the store, his phone still in hand. He tapped the screen a few times, then raised it to his ear. His voice was calm and steady as he spoke. "Can you send the store manager here right away? I'll be waiting." He ended the call without further explanation and turned his attention back to the staff, who were now watching him with a mixture of suspicion and confusion. Neither of them spoke. The atmosphere had shifted, but they didn't yet understand how badly they had misjudged the situation. Within minutes, the glass door swung open, and in walked a well-dressed man in his early 50s. He wore a navy blue blazer, designer shoes, and a worried expression. He spotted Jordan and approached quickly. "Mr. Miles," he said, breathless, "I just got the call. I'm so sorry I wasn't here earlier. Had I known you were coming." Jordan raised a hand to stop him. "No need for apologies. You weren't the problem. But now that you're here, I want everyone to gather." The manager turned to the employees, now visibly nervous. "Both of you, over here, now." They shuffled toward the center of the showroom, avoiding Jordan's gaze. Jordan took a step back, letting the moment hang in the air. He looked at each of them calm, composed, but with a fire behind his eyes. "You want to know who I am," he said, breaking the silence. "I'm Jordan Miles. I built this company from nothing. Every piece of jewelry in this store, every light fixture, every inch of this design, you're standing in my vision." The woman's mouth dropped open. The male associate swallowed hard and took an involuntary step back. "I came here today to see how things run when the CEO isn't watching," Jordan continued. "I didn't come in wearing a suit or making a scene. I walked in like any customer would, quiet, respectful, ready to shop." He paused and let the weight of his words sink in. "And what did I get in return? I was ignored. I was judged. I was mocked. You whispered behind my back, laughed at me, refused to show me a ring, because you assumed I couldn't afford it, all because of how I looked." The room was dead silent now. Even the background music seemed distant, irrelevant. "This isn't just about bad customer service," Jordan said, his voice low but firm. "This is about something deeper: discrimination, classism, the belief that someone who looks like me, dressed like me, couldn't possibly be someone of worth, and that mindset has no place in my company." The employees shifted uncomfortably, their faces pale. The manager looked furious, not at Jordan, but at his staff. Teresa, who was still in the store, stood off to the side, watching it all unfold with satisfaction. "Professionalism isn't a mask you wear for the wealthy or well-dressed," Jordan continued. "It's a standard you uphold for everyone who walks through those doors. That's what builds loyalty, that's what builds a brand, and that's what this store was supposed to stand for." He turned to the manager. "I want a full report of their behavior today. I want to see the security footage. I want to know every customer they ignored, every moment they failed to do their jobs." The manager nodded quickly. "Absolutely. I'll handle it immediately." Then Jordan faced the employees one last time. "You don't have to like everyone who walks in here, but you will treat them with dignity. You will serve them with respect, or you won't be here." With that, he turned and walked toward the exit, his presence commanding even in the most casual of outfits. As the door closed behind him, the store was left in stunned silence. The message was clear. The consequences were coming. Back at headquarters, Jordan sat in his office, the city skyline stretching behind him through the tall glass windows. A large monitor in front of him played the security footage from the store visit. Every moment was captured in sharp detail, from the disinterested glances of the staff to the mocking smirks, the hushed gossip, and the blatant disregard for a paying customer. Watching it unfold again, now from a third-person view, only reinforced what he had felt in the moment. The behavior wasn't just unprofessional, it was unacceptable. He had built Miles and Company on the principle that luxury and respect go hand in hand. His vision wasn't just about fine jewelry, it was about creating an environment where every customer felt valued, regardless of their appearance, background, or bank account. That vision had been violated in the very space that was meant to embody it. Next, he opened a folder of customer service reports from that location. Several complaints stood out, all submitted within the last 2 months. Repeated mentions of cold attitudes, unfriendly staff, and being talked down to surfaced. A few even described situations eerily similar to his own experience, customers feeling judged or unwelcome based on how they looked. He leaned back in his chair, letting the information settle. The pattern was clear. This wasn't a one-time lapse in professionalism. It was a culture problem, one that had been allowed to grow unchecked. Later that afternoon, a meeting was called at the store. The 2 employees involved were brought in, along with the store manager. Jordan didn't attend in person this time. Instead, he sent a regional director to deliver the message, backed by clear instructions. The female associate was terminated immediately for her repeated violations and blatant disrespect. The male employee was placed on indefinite suspension, pending further review and a formal investigation into his conduct with customers. The store manager, while not directly involved, received a formal reprimand for poor oversight and failure to enforce company standards. Jordan knew that punishment alone wouldn't fix the deeper issue, so he implemented a sweeping policy change across all branches of Miles & Company, effective immediately. Every employee, from new hires to senior managers, would be required to complete a comprehensive anti-bias training program. The training would focus not only on racial and socioeconomic sensitivity, but also on empathy, active listening, and the importance of treating every customer with equal value. The modules would be interactive, using real-life scenarios, including anonymized footage from Jordan's recent visit, to emphasize the consequences of unchecked assumptions. It wouldn't be a one-time box to check. It would be ongoing, with periodic refreshers, performance reviews, and secret shopper assessments to measure real progress. Word about the incident spread quickly within the company, but Jordan didn't shy away from it. In fact, he addressed it publicly in an internal newsletter. He didn't name names or dwell on punishment. Instead, he focused on accountability, growth, and the power of second chances when paired with sincere effort. As for Teresa, the loyal customer who had stood up for him when no one else would, Jordan reached out to her personally. He invited her to lunch at one of the city's finest restaurants and thanked her for her kindness and courage. He also offered her a private jewelry consultation at headquarters and gifted her a signature diamond pendant, custom designed and engraved with a single word on the back: respect. She accepted the gift with tears in her eyes and a wide smile, touched not just by the piece but by the gesture behind it. Jordan believed in leading by example. He knew you couldn't control every action of every employee, but you could shape the environment they worked in. You could set the bar high and refuse to lower it for anyone. The events of the past few days had reminded him that no company was immune to complacency, but with swift action and clear values, you could correct the course, and that's exactly what he intended to do. A week after the incident, Jordan Miles stood on stage at a well-attended business leadership conference in the heart of the city. The room was filled with entrepreneurs, CEOs, aspiring professionals, and members of the press. He had been invited to speak about brand leadership and company values, but after what happened at his store, he decided to address something much deeper. He stood behind the podium, not with notes or a rehearsed speech, but with something far more powerful: his own story. Not long ago, Jordan began, I walked into one of my own stores dressed casually. No title, no introductions, just me, like any customer. What happened next wasn't a surprise, but it was still disappointing. I was ignored, dismissed, and judged, not because of anything I said or did, but because of how I looked. The room grew silent. That experience wasn't new to me. It's something many people go through every day, being sized up by appearance, assumptions, or skin color, before anyone bothers to listen. But what made it different this time was that it happened in a place built on my vision, a place meant to be inclusive, welcoming, and respectful, and it reminded me of a truth: we cannot afford to forget. How we treat people when we don't know who they are says everything about who we are. His words resonated deeply. Heads nodded throughout the room. Some people lowered their eyes, reflecting on their own past behavior. Jordan continued, it wasn't just about poor customer service, it was about dignity. Every human being deserves to be treated with basic respect, whether they're buying a diamond ring or just browsing, whether they walk in wearing designer clothes or sneakers and a hoodie. We all have a responsibility to lead with character, not assumptions. He went on to talk about the actions he had taken, reviewing the incident, holding staff accountable, and implementing anti-bias and customer service training across the company. He described it not as punishment, but as a path to change, a reset in culture. None of us are perfect, he said, but we can all choose to be better. We can all choose to learn, listen, and lead differently.
That's the kind of leadership that lasts, not the kind that shouts your title, but the kind that shows your values. After the speech, the applause was thunderous. People stood. The moment had struck a chord. Jordan wasn't just a successful businessman. He had become a voice for change in the business world. News outlets picked up the story. Clips from his speech went viral, sparking discussions about race, appearance, and professionalism in corporate spaces. Community leaders, civil rights advocates, and fellow CEOs reached out to show their support. Many praised his handling of the incident, not with vengeance, but with wisdom and accountability. Some even adopted similar training programs within their own companies. Meanwhile, the store that had once been the scene of disrespect began to transform. New staff were brought in, trained under the updated program. Teresa, the loyal customer, became a kind of local legend, and her story inspired others to speak up when witnessing bias or mistreatment. Slowly but surely, the store's reputation began to shift. Customers who had once felt unwelcome returned. New faces came in, curious about the brand that stood for more than luxury. The space began to reflect its founder's vision more clearly than ever before, a place where everyone felt seen, respected, and valued. Jordan didn't need to make noise about the change. The change spoke for itself, not just in jewelry cases and sales figures, but in the way people were treated the moment they walked through the door. It wasn't just a lesson learned, it was a lesson shared. Months had passed since that unforgettable day at the jewelry store, and Jordan Miles decided it was time to return, not as a test, not undercover, but simply as himself. He parked his car in front of the familiar storefront and stepped inside, quietly taking in the changes. The atmosphere felt different the moment he entered. There was warmth in the air, not just from the lighting, but from the energy of the people inside. A young woman near the entrance greeted him with a genuine smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Miles and Company. Is there anything I can help you with today?" Her tone was kind, respectful, and inviting. It was the type of greeting that made customers feel seen, something he had intended for every visitor from the start. Jordan looked around. The staff were different, new faces, diverse in background and attitude. But it wasn't just the people that had changed, the culture had too. He could hear it in the soft professional tones being used with each customer, see it in the way staff moved with confidence and care. They weren't just selling jewelry, they were offering an experience, one rooted in dignity and respect. He made his way to one of the glass displays, admiring a new collection that hadn't been there during his last visit. A staff member approached him, attentive but never pushy. "This collection just arrived last week," she explained. Each piece was designed with a story in mind, about strength, transformation, and legacy. Jordan smiled. "That sounds like something I'd be interested in." As he continued browsing, a familiar face appeared. Teresa, the loyal customer, who had spoken up on his behalf. She wasn't just visiting today. She had been hired as a part-time client experience ambassador after the incident. Her job was to ensure customers felt heard, seen, and respected. She spotted him and walked over with a grin. "Back again, Mr. Miles," she said. "Looks like the place finally lives up to your name." Jordan chuckled, then nodded thoughtfully. "It really does." He spoke briefly with the store manager, who proudly walked him through the training updates, customer feedback improvements, and even a new mentorship program for young employees of color interested in the luxury retail business. It was more than he had hoped for when he first set these changes in motion. What had started as a painful moment of injustice had sparked a lasting transformation, not just in one store, but across the entire company. Jordan stood near the entrance for a moment, watching as customers were greeted, guided, and appreciated. He felt something deeper than satisfaction. He felt proud that he hadn't let that moment pass in silence, proud that he had chosen to act, not out of anger, but with purpose, proud that he had helped build something that now reflected his values more honestly than ever before. As he walked out of the store, he paused and looked back. The Miles and Company sign above the entrance shone in the sunlight, the glass doors reflecting not just his image, but the journey he had taken to reach this point. He knew there were still challenges ahead, in business, in society, and in how people treat one another. But this store, this moment, was proof that change was possible, that standing up for yourself could be the first step in standing up for others, and that sometimes the most powerful change doesn't come from shouting at a system, but from stepping inside it and changing it from within.